Hey guys, it's Kayla, and today I want to talk about my favorite reads of 2017. These aren't necessarily my top rated books of 2017, but they're the books that have stayed with me the longest and definitely the books that I enjoyed the most. And I've decided, for the sake of time, to keep rereads off this list, or else I would talk about The Name of the Wind for about 20 more minutes, and I've already done that enough on my channel so far. I really only have one comic that I want to talk about, and that is Giant Days. I read volumes 3, 4, and 5. This is actually volume 6. I'm using it as a placeholder. Giant Days is a slice of life comic, and it's about 3 friends in college, and it's just so relatable, so heartwarming, so hilarious. The characters are like your best friends, like you know these people, and it's just fantastically done, and I will just keep reading this series forever. I think a new volume comes out about every 4 months, and if you're into comics and you haven't checked out Giant Days yet, you're doing comics wrong. I just can't say enough about this, and I definitely enjoyed reading the 3 volumes that I did last year. Next on my list, I want to talk about Big Little Lies by Liam Moriarty. This is the first Liam Moriarty book that I actually read, and I proceeded to read about 5 more by her after I read it. Big Little Lies, I read this in February, and it just totally put me in a reading mood. It is exactly what I needed. I was in a huge slump, and I still kind of slump it out a little bit every so often. I don't know what's going on there, but Big Little Lies was just incredible, and it was just read at the right time. And I just love this little town mystery a lot, and I think the HBO adaptation did a great job, and I'm a huge fan of the show, and I'm kind of hesitant the fact that it got renewed for season 2, but that's another topic of conversation. But yeah, I rated this 5 out of 5 stars, and for good reason. I thought the mystery was well executed. I thought the writing was really smart. There was like 3 times where I literally gasped out loud because I was like, oh shit. Like, I did not know how things were gonna play out. The big reveal at the end, like, I didn't see that coming, like, at all. And yeah, I just can't say enough about this book. Loved it, loved talking about it to people. I loved learning about kindergarten politics because apparently that's a thing. I definitely recommend this book if you love thrillers, if you like mysteries, and yeah, I absolutely love this, and I think the casting for the show was amazing. Reese Witherspoon did a great job as Madeline, and obviously Nicole Kidman deserved her Emmy that she won for playing Celeste. So I definitely recommend this book. If you're on the fence, definitely check it out. It's a page turner, you'll fly through it. Promise you. Next on my list, I want to talk about Strange as a Dreamer by Laini Taylor. I finished this in March, and I honestly thought this was going to be my #1 read of 2017, but then I couldn't decide what was my #1, so I decided to make this video instead. This book spoke to me. I was already a Laini Taylor fan. I absolutely loved her Daughter of Smoke and Bone trilogy. So I went into this thinking, how can this top Daughter of Smoke and Bone? And it does. For me personally, I thought this was better. The writing is just unbelievable. Like, I am a huge fan of Laini Taylor's writing, and some people can't deal with it, how flowery it is, or whatever they say, how detailed it is, but I just think it's vivid. She has a way with words that makes me wonder what I'm doing with my life. Like, very rarely does a book motivate me to pursue my own novel, pursue my own writing, and I haven't written in a very long time. This book motivated me to pick up the pen for the first time in months and just write. I feel like towards the beginning of the book, when we learn about Laszlo Strange as a main character and how he's a librarian, it's a book for book lovers, but at the same time, it's also a book for writers, because the imagination that went into creating this world is just unbelievable, and it speaks volumes. I'm getting kind of emotional talking about it because this is what I want. Like, this is what I want to create, something as beautiful and as vivid and as unique as this. Like, that's the highest praise I can possibly give it. I absolutely love this book, and I cannot wait for the sequel because the ending just tore me to shreds a little bit. But what else is new with Laini Taylor books? I'm not going to go into the summary because I personally didn't know a lot about the summary. It was very vague when I read the summary for it before I read this, so I think that's part of the magic, honestly, discovering it for yourself. And this UK edition, like, I can't stop looking at it. I'm sorry if I didn't look at the camera like while I was talking about this, but just look at it. Look at the gold foil, and like, look at the back and the blue stained pages. It's just a work of art itself. Definitely represents what's inside of the book as well. Needless to say, I gave this a 5 out of 5 stars. I'm just gonna, yeah, obviously. Next on my list, I have the Wayward Children series by Shauna Maguire. This is a series about kids and teenagers who escape to these fantasy worlds through doors and wardrobes essentially, and they come back and they're just shell-shocked, like they can't survive in the world without other people around them that know exactly what they went through and what they're missing in the world. And so Eleanor West creates this home for wayward children essentially. It's a group home filled with kids who have escaped to fantasy lands. I feel like audiobooks are the way to go with this series because I feel like the way it's written and the way the stories are told, it's supposed to be spoken out loud. Each audiobook is only like 4 hours. The books are really short, but like I feel like it's definitely worth it to get the audiobooks because I don't know that I would have enjoyed them this much without getting the audiobooks. Like leafing through it, I just don't know if it would have like had the same magical effect. And yeah, I definitely recommend this series if you love fantasy. It has great LGBTQA rep, and I just really appreciate that a lot. Definitely check the series out, and I cannot wait for the 3rd book in January. Next on my list is Homegoing by Ya Gyasi, and I feel like I said her name wrong in a previous video, but I recently watched an interview with her, and that's how they pronounce it, Gyasi. And I loved this book. I feel like everyone should read this book. That's how good it was. It takes place starting in the early 1800s, I believe, or late 1700s in Ghana during the slave trade, and it's about 2 half-sisters at the beginning of the story. One sister gets sold into the slave trade, and the other sister actually marries an Englishman in the same castle. And then the preceding chapters are their descendants over the next 300 years. So it's essentially a collection of short stories, but they all connect. It is just fantastically done, and the fact that this is a debut novel just blows my mind because it's so ambitious, but it's just so good. And I will read anything that Ya Gyasi comes out with next because this just was just unbelievable. And I know like I'm like speechless right now because it makes you speechless. Like it says so much about slavery and racism and the impact that slavery has had on our world, and over the course of hundreds of years how it has influenced our world and the world that we live in. Needless to say, gave it 5 out of 5. Just yeah, 5 out of 5. So then I also read The Voyage to Magical North by Claire Fayers. This is the first book in her Accidental Pirate series. This is a middle grade adventure story about pirates and magicians, and they have to journey to Magical North essentially to do this mission. I'm not going to get into it, but it's just so heartwarming and fun, and there's no other word for it except fun, and the characters just stay with you, and it's just so great. There's just so many puns involved, like the leader of the pirate ship, her name is Cassiopeia, and I just love that so much, and she's just such a badass, and I just love our main characters in this story. And yes, I just highly recommend this if you love fantasy, if you love adventure, if you love middle grade. Just please check this out. Please check this out. More love needs to be had for this series. The next book I have written down here is Transcendence by Shay Savage, and this book was actually a surprise. When I went to BookNet Fest, Lainey from Ginger Reads Lainey was talking about it, and it's just like a Kindle buy. It was like a $4.99. I was like, you know what? Since she was talking about it, I'm going to try it. It's about a caveman who doesn't have our brain, like he's one step behind, so he can't process language, and a time traveler from like our time, a female time traveler, shows up in his trap essentially, and he like takes her in, and it's just about their lives together. But since he can't process language, like the whole book doesn't have any dialogue, and everything's told in his perspective, which is just really interesting. It is a romance novel, but it's more like heartfelt than that. And I think it says a lot about language and how we perceive language and how language transcends time and how it transcends verbal communication and things like that. And I just really enjoyed it, and it stayed with me. Like, I'll recommend it to anyone. I didn't realize how attached I was to the characters until something happens later on in the book, and I was like, oh, that just like touched my heart. Like, I really enjoyed it, and I'm just so happy that Lainey talked about it at BookNet Fest, or else I probably would have never ever even heard of it or picked it up. And the last book I have on my favorites list for 2017 is the last book I actually read in 2017, and that would be The Fifth Season by N.K. Jemisin. And this is the first book in the Broken Earth trilogy, and I have been hearing nothing but good things about this trilogy, and I just kept putting it off and putting it off, and I finally got on, and guys, I am on the hype train. I am here to stay. The imagination that went into this book and creating this apocalyptic world is just fantastic, and I can't wait to read more N.K. Jemisin because of it. Basically, this takes place in futuristic Earth where there's a fifth season every so often based on apocalyptic events such as earthquakes and things like that, and it throws the earth into a fifth season essentially where, say, food doesn't grow for 10 years. But since this is a thing that's recorded in history, people are prepared for it, communities are prepared for it, and in this world there are these people called origines, and they have the power to curb the earthquakes and control the earth, so to speak, and control the things that cause the apocalyptic scenarios and such. However, they are the oppressed people of the earth. There's a lot of commentary in this story about oppression and society and racism, and I just really, really appreciate the way it was done, the refreshing way that it was presented. I highly recommend this to anyone who loves fantasy, because I feel like it's definitely a staple and will be a classic in years to come. I mean, it's won Hugo Awards for a reason. The hype is real. Like, if you're hesitant and you've heard that it's confusing, it's not really confusing. I don't think it's confusing at all. Like, obviously, a fantasy world, you're going to learn new elements as you go. Pieces of the puzzle are going to start fitting together towards the end. Like, you might be confused for the first 50%, but it is so worth the payoff at the end, I promise you. Alright guys, that's it for my favorites list. Let me know below what your favorite read of 2017 was, and I will see you all soon with another video. Bye!